Okay, so now we're back, and I'm going to go to my live stream. And YouTube is telling me that the live stream is offline. It's still telling me that it's offline. So the problem is that in terms of some sort of real-time sense of whether things are working or not, basically it's impossible. The delay between if you start and stop a live stream, you know, the time it takes for it to show up on your account and stuff, is sufficiently long that it's rather difficult to difficult to edit. Like, in other words, I had a live stream that I stopped just a few minutes ago, but it hasn't showed up in my account. I really want to delete it. And in order to figure out how this is working, you know, the question for me is, are we going to live stream, or are we just going to create videos and upload them? It's looking increasingly like live streaming is just a big pain in the butt. Because right now I am streaming and YouTube insists that I am not. So for all I know, I am streaming and I just can't see it, which is ludicrous. There it is. Okay, so what I've learned is that for YouTube to register your activity in a live stream takes at least a couple minutes. Now that's not very long, and as long as we know it's going to work, that's fine. Okay, so before I go too much further, what I need to do is go back and look at my channel, and I just want to see if the live stream that I put up a minute ago has in fact shown up. Yes. Okay, so that's good. So I should be able to go to, and by the way, if this is boring to you, go get yourself a cup of coffee or a snack and come back in about 2 to 3 minutes, and I should have this all. July 16. Okay. OBS Studio says we have connected. Okay, so I'm going to delete this. Okay, we are back on track. Now, what I did was I just deleted a previous live stream that had some garbage in it that I got sidetracked by inserting a keyframe in the grease pencil. If you can believe that. With all the stuff I'm doing, can you believe in disconnecting? So, very interesting. OBS Studio says everything's working properly. Okay, so now it looks like I'm live again. You know, is the live streaming worth it? I'm not really sure. It looks to me like I'm spending more time dinking around with the live stream than I am working on the animation. So, okay, so I'm going to do a quick recap. The quick recap is simply this. I did some tests by inserting a background image in here and animating it, and actually just turning it around and using constant interpolation so that I just change the angle of it, just to make sure things are going to sort of work. And obviously this image could be completely changed and updated, painted over, and then loaded up in Blender later, and everything updates, so it's not a big deal. The answer is yes. It looks like everything's going to work fine. So with that, I do not want to waste any more time on foregrounds and backgrounds and environments. What I want to do is go ahead and get these characters tightened up and inked. Let's get the inking done, and then let's get the painting done, get it rendered out, so we can bring it in and start building the environments around the characters. Okay, so number 2, I modified this shot because previously I had a sort of semi-spherical, I should say, balcony, which is completely wrong. There is no balcony in this environment. What you actually have is a sort of a painted stone wall that then has literally a window cut into it, and it's like a walkout doorway. You mean you could literally walk out the window and fall to your death, is actually the way it is constructed. So with that, we got to make that change. So what I did was I simply added a layer here, and I'm just going to call this layer window. And the reason I put the window in another layer is so that I can parent the window to an empty and then just keyframe animate it. Okay, you might argue that in a perfect world, what we really should be doing, because the way this action goes, what we really should be doing is animating the camera, have a larger environment. But because I already did this hand-drawn animation in such a way that we've got all the animation locked into the camera's viewpoint. In other words, I simulated the camera move by the way I drew it. So it's just going to be more hassle to go back and try to do it as a camera move. You could do it either way, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to just put in the background environment and animate that. Same effect as a camera move. So what caused me to interrupt the live stream earlier was I got to here and needed to delete the window. Okay. Now I could do that by grabbing all the points and just hitting the G key. Oh, got to be in edit points mode. If I hit the G key and wiggle these points, it'll insert a keyframe. But I got a little irritated because it's like, how do you just insert a keyframe? Well, the hotkey is DB together. So I'm going to hit D and B, and as you can see, it inserted a keyframe, and now the window is gone, which is what I was trying to do. So that's solved. Now, having said all that, let's look at something else here that's going to be kind of interesting. Now, I'm going to hit the star key so that I'm no longer soloing the window layer. Drink of my coffee. So what I wanted to do here is see if I can possibly save some time on this shot. Okay, so here we have Akari sleeping. We got the wide shot, and then we go to this even wider shot where we really get the context of the environment that she is in. Here's how I want to try to do that. I'm going to go ahead and just go grab these points, and actually I'm going to grab the walls as well. Okay, and hit the L key to select linked. Okay, it looks like I missed a few, so there we go. Okay. You know, that's interesting. Now that I'm here, I'm going to stop for a minute and I'm going to go... You know what I really want to do for painting purposes? I really want to get rid of all these superfluous lines. What's interesting is I can't draw and have a selection at the same time. It should be nice because when I hit the A key and select them all, I can see them really clearly. So it's pretty easy to get rid of them. But then if you start drawing, whoops, that was my shadow line there. But then you start drawing, and I guess now it is working. Okay, so I hit A. How did I do this? I want to get the order of operations here because that's a pretty valuable thing to do. So basically what you want to do is select A, but then hit D to draw, Okay, so now, because I can see these points so clearly, this is really going to save me some headaches when I go to do painting, because like if I did this in Krita, Krita's going to see all those really light points and respect them, which is a good thing. And so, you know, if there was a really faint line, it's going to stop doing a fill. So anyway, that's cool. That got rid of that problem. Okay, so now here's the interesting part. I'm going to go ahead and grab all these points and hit Control C. What I'm going to do is actually, this is such a kludge, but it's awesome. Okay, I'm going to lock the blue pencil so I can't accidentally make any modifications to it. And actually, before I lock it, I'm going to make it a lot lighter, really light, just enough so I can see what I had. And now I'm going to cut and paste Krita. I'm going to cut and paste Akari into this shot. And now I'm going to, let's see, I think I need to hit the comma. No. Excuse me, sorry guys. Yes, the period key. Okay, so you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down to scale, and it turns out this is really not bright enough. I guess we need to go ahead and leave that brighter. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate Akari like that. Okay. Not too bad. Now what I'm going to do is lock my ink layer and unlock my sketch layer. And then I'm just going to delete all these blue lines. I say delete. Of course, what I really mean is erase. Okay. Is this still working? Everything seems to be working now. Okay. So that's cool. So we managed to, let's see, let's get the camera angle. Oh yes, this is important. Okay. I'm going to go back here. I want to be seeing through the camera. I forgot to reproject the strokes. That's what I wanted to. That's actually what I was about to do. But what's strange is I can't see my camera. So let's solve this right now. Okay, we want only render to be turned off so we can see our camera. Now we want to see through our camera. Very good. That's what we wanted. Okay, so there we have that, and there we have that. So let's hit the tab key. Now this is important. If I pan around, you can see that those, because I rotated the grease pencil strokes, they're no longer in my normal 2D plane, and that's going to be a problem. So what I want to do is go ahead and unlock this, and then what I'm going to do is reproject the strokes planar. Okay, now if this worked the way it's supposed to, as you can see, okay, good. I'm actually glad that's interesting. That's interesting. What I just discovered and did not know before this is that a lot of my scene is not in the plane. Okay, here's why. Here's what happened. All the grease pencil strokes are placed at the cursor. At some point, and this is where Blender will get you. if you're not careful. It's a good example of nuance, where there's a little thing you don't think about when you think everything's wonderful with the grease pencil. Then you find out, wait a second, sometimes if you're not careful, things can go really haywire and you don't even know it. And it has happened here. That window and these characters are not supposed to be on two different planes. Now, there absolutely is plenty of scenarios where there's a great value to being able to place different objects in different, levels. Normally you'd think of it as being on the z-axis, but in fact the way I have this laid out, it's actually the y-axis, because I'm using x and z. The reason I did that is so that I can be in the front view, and by hitting the 9 key I can flip my canvas. For drawing purposes, it's easier. So anyway, what's going on here right now, and I want to show you how we're going to correct it, is that everything's basically fine except this layer where I created that window. Because you see, if I take this window out, I'm pretty sure everything else is on the same plane. Everything's fine. It's just the reprojected Akari, and then it's the window. How did this happen? The way it happened is when I drew that window, and then subsequently when I rotated Akari's points and pasted them in, the cursor had moved. When did the cursor get moved? I have no idea. Not a clue when it happened. It was probably yesterday. And then I saved my work, and when you bring it up, the cursor is where it is. So what do you do about that? I think Control-Alt-Shift-C. I want the... That's not it. It's kind of funny because I spent so much time working with Krita and OpenTunes in the last months, actually, that there's stuff I've forgotten that's like ridiculous. Hotkeys, like a little while ago I forgot that DB is the hotkey to insert a grease pencil keyframe. So now what I want to do is I want to place my cursor at the center. Okay. I do not, by the way, want to see my camera. Alt-C, no. I just don't remember the hotkey. Control-Shift-C. It's really amazing how much this is coming up today. I wish I had my handy-dandy Blender guru advisor sitting beside me to just say, "Hey, idiot, the hotkey to replace the cursor at center is whatever." I mean, it actually looks like it might be at center, but this is just something that simply has to be figured out, because the idea that you're going along and all of a sudden, by the way, you can't ever get any work done ever. Why? Because you can't remember how to put the cursor back to the center. It's so beyond stupid that I just makes me want to puke. All right. So what's the hotkey? It's not Alt-S. It's something with S or C. Shift-C, no. Control-C, no. Control-Shift-C, no. Control-Alt-C, no. Control-Shift-S, no. Shift-S, yes. That's what it is. Shift-S, cursor to center, which I have hotkey to Shift-Control-Alt-minus. Let's see if it works. So let's just go here. Control-Shift-Alt-minus. Doesn't seem to be working. Cursor to center. That's strange. Maybe it's this minus key on, not on the numpad. Yep, that's what it is. Control-Shift-Alt. So I have that hotkey set up. Okay, so now I really hate to waste time with this, but you know what? tough luck. This stuff has to be addressed and solved. So we're just going to deal with it. Okay, it does appear that all of my art is on the center exactly as we wish, except the window and a card. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and grab all these points, and we're going to reproject the strokes planar. Now that should have moved it to the center, and it did. Okay, very good. Except that's interesting. Okay, so I'm looking at the window. I need to be looking at the main action. I'm going to go ahead and kill the window so I'm not like thinking about it. Okay, yeah, actually this did not work. This did not work at all. 3 key. Okay. So I'm going to go to the front view and reproject planar. Something happened. Let's go to the side view, and now it is correct. So what I'm going to do is go forward, and I want to just look at this. Yep, that's correct as well. So what I was actually seeing that was throwing me off was not the fact that the subsequent frames were off, but rather the fact that this one hadn't been corrected when I thought it had. Okay, so there we go. We're back in business. So there's that. So now we want to turn the window back on, and let's go ahead and solo that. Solo the layer. Okay, and okay, there's the window. I'm just wondering why do I have all these keyframes? Okay, let's go to the camera view. This is the kind of stuff that drives me nuts. If you want to know, if you want to understand why I spent so much time dicking around with trying to work with Krita, work with OpenTunes, yada yada, this is why. Is because you get this stuff going on where you just spend time, and time goes on and on and on just trying to solve a stupid problem instead of being creative. I should be drawing right now. I shouldn't be dicking around with, why aren't things lining up properly? Why isn't this where it's supposed to be? I don't understand. Okay. Reproject. Okay, it's where it's supposed to be. And now, after all that struggle, we're back in business. How long did that take? About 15 minutes. 15 minutes of utterly useless dicking around that would have been solved by two things. Number one, know where the cursor is. Make sure it's in the center. And number two, know your hotkeys. The whole thing could have taken 20 seconds instead of 20 minutes. But yeah, I mean, I get a little testy on stuff like this because this is like, okay, you know, you allocate so much time to work on the project today, and all the time has just been sucked away with a bunch of nothing, right? So if you want to see me in a saucy frame of mind, this is it. You're seeing it live, okay? Anyway, so now we're back in business again. The thing I want to say about this frame is that we're going to trick it a bit, and we need to unsolo that layer. And I'm just going to make a few little modifications. To accommodate the change in perspective that we just introduced. Okay, I really think I want to be in my camera view. Okay. Yeah, it's amazing. This is just, you know, we have a lot of good days. Today is a bad day because I'm just running into one thing after another that's frustrating me. Okay, so why can't I see my camera framing anymore? Is it because I hid the camera? That wouldn't make any sense at all. If I go into object mode and okay, there's my okay. The reason okay, the reason I couldn't see my camera framing, oh my gosh, is because I was simply zoomed in too far. Wow! Golly, how dumb can you be? So I'm just gonna make a few modifications here. The biggest one that really bugs me is this. I'm gonna say this really needs to be redrawn. Uh, Obviously, we're lying. We're tricking this. We're not making it accurate. We're just making it look right. But the basic problem is that that perspective was somewhat exaggerated. That's too much. Too much of a change, I should say. Okay. Now, as far as the shadow goes, I mean, it really doesn't matter, but I'm going to just draw a line like this, and then hit the E key, and just try to smooth it out. Okay, and actually, having said that, I'm gonna completely undo a bunch of stuff and rethink this a bit. Okay, first of all, checking. Yep, cursor's at 0. Back to the camera view. Okay. Oops. Well, if you were going to say, gee, Dave, you're trying to save all that time by cutting and pasting your strokes. You know, I'm really struggling today. It's like I can't even draw a straight line. Okay, let's use the... Now, the problem with using the polyline is your strokes always, no matter what, come out as dark as possible, which is precisely what I don't want. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it the old 3D way. There we go. Problem solved. When I say the 3D way, in other words, using your mouse to manipulate points the way you would if you were working in 3D instead of drawing. But I guess what I want to say is that what I'm doing here is not fun. All this fine-tuning, instead of just redrawing it correctly or whatever, is really takes the fun out of the process for me. And if it's not fun, why are we doing it? So I want to get this done and over with as fast as possible. Okay. Now, where are we at? Let's turn on the correct brush, which is super smooth ink. Okay, that looks okay. Let's go select linked. This is okay. Turn off the O key. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so great example. Great example yet again of something that, you know, it's not Blender's fault, it's completely my fault. But all those strokes that I just drew were in the wrong layer. So, you know, again, this is just something I want to point out. Comes up again and again and again. The location of the cursor and just things like this, like which layer were you in when you were drawing. So I've made so many mistakes today, it's amazing. It's actually kind of scary how many mistakes I've made today. So you could argue that maybe that really should be in the window layer because it's part of the window. Well, but we've got this extra keyframe right here, so let me get rid of that. Okay. Because probably what we're going to want to do is take this whole thing and parent it to an empty and just animate the whole shot. Or what we might do is we might have a graphic that is maybe mapped to a plane and placed over top, covering up Akari, obviously with a hole in it so you can see in the window, and then actually parent the grease pencil layers to the plane so that when we animate the plane, the grease pencil layers move with it. That would actually probably be the smartest way to do it. So in that scenario, what we'll actually have here is there will probably be a plane back here that's got the background, and then there would be a plane here that's the foreground, that's the wall, and then the plane in the back and the grease pencil layer would both be parented to the plane that's in the foreground. And by doing that, we could then take the plane that has this whole foreground painted onto it, animate it upwards, and everything else would just go with it. And so that's how, for this particular shot, we would simulate our camera move. And then that wouldn't cause a problem with the fact that we already have this, you know, these guys animated. Because if you think about it, where he is right there is actually in the same spot she is right there, since there is no camera move. You know, I simulated the camera move by drawing, you know, the animation frames framed the way I wanted them to be. So I'm not going to say that this was a total loss. So we got that shot, and that shot looks pretty good. So what I want to do right now is just clean out superfluous keyframes that are just adding trying to think of how to describe what I mean. I mean, in this cluster of keyframes, the truth is that probably most of them are not necessary, because really what I should do is have this whole thing keyframed mapped to a plane and have interpolated keyframes. So just having to think about this. First thing I'm going to do is solo the window layer. And one thing that's a little problematic is the wall is clearly angled, right? You can see the perspective of it. But when these guys, based on the earlier drawing, when these guys get here, the wall appears to be flat. Okay, so let me think about that. Basically, can that be salvaged is the question. I think so. I mean, I think actually these guys almost look better if they were tilted a little bit. But that means every single one of those keyframes has to be modified. So, you know, I can't emphasize enough how it's not that. So you can see we have some confusion. You know, we made some decisions downstream that's affecting what we did upstream, and now we're having to change keyframes that we did before. It isn't that this can happen. I want to emphasize this. It is that this always happens. It's just part of the process. It literally never fails. I've been streaming for almost 40 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and stop for now so I can think about how I'm going to reorganize a few things.